Well, just real quick, because I forgot this in the video, one, you're going to need a funnel like this because sometimes you got to bend it up like that just to get your coolant to get into the radiator. Other than that, I'm going to show you the air box down here below. As you can see, my door to get into my bus is right there. Not all buses are like this, but this one is. So you're going to see this little configuration down here. You see how it's labeled summer and winter on it? You loosen up the wing nut and you basically spin the plate to where the arrows match up, and it'll let you know what kind of intake you're on when you buy your bus, whether you're on the summer or the winter. If you're in the summer, definitely switch and make sure that's on summer, because if not, you're not going to be pulling fresh air, you're going to be pulling hot engine air, okay? So you guys take care and enjoy the video. Check out the temperature. It's 60 degrees on the roof of the bus, and today's video is me going around showing you what you really need to be looking for if you're going to get a bus, okay? I'll say that right now because this is extremely important. We're going to start with the engine. As you can see, I have my doghouse lit up. This is actually my 5.9 mechanical, okay? Now there's a couple of important things you need to pay attention to if you're getting buses. One is checking for blow-by. The first thing you want to do is pull your oil cap. Put your hand on it while your engine's running. If you feel compression pumping against your palm, you have blow-by. You shouldn't feel that at all, okay? The other thing you want to look at when you're buying a bus, especially if you're going to live in cold temperatures like where I live, I didn't really pay attention to this. This was a major mistake on my half. On the intake right here, on this system right here, I'll bring the camera in a lot closer. Whoa. Hold on a second, I had a little bit of a malfunction here with my insulation because the glue's come loose. You got to redo the glue every once in a while, everybody. So, right here on your intake system, there's a little box down below it. You need to see if there's a wire coming out of that, because if there's no wire coming out of it, you don't have any type of heating system for the ignition of your bus, okay? Which is going to make it incredibly hard to start in cold weather. It still will do it, but you're really going to have to lay on that starter for a while. Other than that, you do your transmission fluid like most people know. You do your oil, check that like most people know. This valve right here happens to be your upper heater valve for the inside. Most people don't know that. Check to see if that's on if you buy your bus in cold weather. Make sure it's open. It's just like a spigot. And then make sure the lower one's open too. And I'll show you that here in a second. But then the other thing you have to make sure that you're going to want to look for is your air intake. There's an upper and a lower system on a lot of buses. Down at the bottom, it's the plate you spin. It tells you which valve it's going to. You're going to have summer and winter options, and I'll show you that in a second. So for the sake of not getting the inside of my bus incredibly cold, I'm going to go ahead and close the doghouse, and then we're going to move on as I drop stuff to the rest of the stuff that's pretty obvious. And then we're going to get into the not so obvious stuff, okay? So, when it comes to buses, most of the time you have to pay attention because your lower valve for your heater, I'm going to have to show you guys without me being in there, a good thing. So, that little box right there has that valve on it. That valve right there is responsible for whether your heater lines can flow coolant through them or not when you turn your pump on the inside of the bus. You have to really check that. Now, the last thing you're going to want to pay attention to when it comes to your coolant system, because if you don't have a coolant system, you don't have a heater. You're going to want to make sure that you pop that open and you check this little itty bitty glass eye right here. As you can see, I got to add fluid to mine, and I know why. One of my T-lines on my radiator going to my heater system has a little bit of a leak on it. It drips every once in a while. So over, I don't know, eight months, I have to add coolant every once in a while. But that's totally fine. Other than that, you'll have your your wash fluids and stuff, and that's just not really too big of a deal. But the other big deals that you really have to worry about are your hubs. You have to check your hubs and make sure your hubs aren't leaking. If they're leaking, you're going to have some problems. You need to get them fixed immediately because they can cause a lot of damage and make your repair bill very expensive. Most of them, as you can see, have this plug on them right here. And then they have lines on them that tell you where you need to add fluid and fill Okay, when it's on this full line, you're good to go. So also make sure it's not black, bubbly, and burnt and all the rest of the stuff. I'm going to have to get these changed once I get ready to hit the road again in this thing. In the meantime, I'm parked over where I'm at. Another thing you have to really pay attention to is your suspension system and your steering system. You can see right in here, I know it's really hard, but right here there is a grease zerk on your front leaf spring shackle for your bus. This happens to be the line that has the split in it that's dripping every once in a while, so I don't really worry about it. It only drips when I'm running my heater, and I don't really run that much for too long, and it doesn't drip that much, so I don't really worry about it too much. Other than that, we're going to get under the whole front back half of the steering system, because you have to grease all your suspension in here, okay? Don't forget that. You have to check this. This is the stuff you really have to check, because they don't always do the hub seals, okay? Keep that in mind. And they don't always grease it when you go to buy this, okay? So pay attention to that. But if you notice right here, there's a grease zerk here, and there's another grease zerk right here. So you hook a grease gun to them and you pump them until you see a little bit of grease come out. Don't over pump these things, okay? Just give them a little bit of grease here and there. The other thing you're going to want to do is a driveline check, okay? You go up to your driveline when you get underneath this thing, and you have to get underneath it. Don't think you don't. You get underneath it, and you grab your driveline as hard as you can at whatever angle you have the most leverage, and you try to shake it and see if it's got any shaking loose. If it's got any shaking or movement to it at all, you have a bad U-joint. You got to replace it immediately, okay? You also have to pay attention to see whether your U-joints, because a lot of U-joints, like this one, have grease zerks, okay? Now I'm going to bring you up and show you right on the tip of my finger, right there. That's the grease zerk for the U-joint. You do not want grease to explode from the U-joint. The second you sound or hear any type of bubble popping, you're going to want to stop. Like, a couple is cool, but don't keep pumping until grease explodes, because once you do that, you've just basically you've set that U-joint down a path of destruction, unfortunately. The other thing that you have to worry about is your steering knuckles. You're going to want to grab those and shake them really good too, and make sure none of your steering is loose. And then on top of that, you want to come over here and you want to get all of your grease zerks and make sure you pick and clean all these before you pump them up. You're going to want to check your uppers, your lowers, everything that's involved with your steering whatsoever, okay? Those are mandatory if you're going to get a bus, because I guarantee you most places that you buy a bus from will not do this for you. All right? So, on to the back, because there's a really important feature when you're talking about axles. The back suspension has grease zerks on it too, okay? So don't be mistaken. Don't think it doesn't. So I'm going to get under the back, because you have to make sure the fluid in your pumpkin is not only good, but is at the right level. And I'll show you how to do that by telling it to you. I can't really do much to this because we're still dealing with really sub-zero temperatures, and I'm really regretting not wearing my gloves right now because it's snow on the ground. Anyway, I know, bad choice, right? Anyway, so we're going to come over here, and I'm going to show you. You see that giant thing right there? That's called the pumpkin. That happens to be the differential case for your rear axle, okay? Now your drive shaft goes into that and hits a spider gear system, and then, you know, pinions out to your rear end. You'll notice there's those two bolts. I'll bring you in even closer. Okay. You see those two bolts right there? The lower bolt is how you drain the fluid, and the upper bolt is how you fill it. And when you fill it till it barely starts spewing out of that hole, and then you close it and you're done. Same rules apply as the front axle. If you're bubbly or black or anything, you need to replace it immediately, okay? So, I hope this helped you out. It's really cold climbing under this thing. Whew. Also, one more thing, make sure your shocks aren't bleeding any oil or anything like that, because if they are, you need to replace them too. Okay? But other than that, your standard tire checks and everything else you can do. You make sure your tread's good. Make sure you don't have a heel toe effect. And if you're wondering what that is, I'll show you. Just before we end up this video and I move on to the rest of the chores that I got to do, I actually have to replace the tires on my bus. So I get to show you what the heel toe is. This is the heel toe on the tread. I'm going to take you in real close so that you can see it. You should be able to see that right there. Heel toe effect is when your tread has that weird kick where it's being worn uneven and it doesn't make any sense. They call it heel toe. Okay. So other than that, I'm going to go ahead and get done and get everything else that I got to do. You guys take care, and I will see you next time. Let me know if this was helpful by leaving a like on it. And if you're still thinking about subscribing, that's totally cool. I get it. But if not, hit that button, all right? So you guys take care, and I will definitely see you next time when the sun isn't so blinding, all right? Later.